So, I'm a vegetarian. I would say that's not food. But you might have a different opinion, meat being food. So we'll give you the benefit of the doubt here that, there's an issue here about food. What if we diverted all this corn that was going to the cattle? Will we have less meat? Well, in permaculture, we always go back to where things started. And if you go back to where cattle come from, they come from the forests of southern Europe and formerly northern Africa. We have a desert there now in northern Africa that was caused by overgrazing. It's called the Sahara. So cattle have big, wide feet. They're good on soft forest soil. And they have 4 stomachs. Bison have cloven hooves. They're really good for the prairie. They can eat grass. But cattle eat shrubs. Cattle have no acid in their stomach whatsoever. It's pH 7. It's neutral. Our stomach acid's around pH 2. We can dissolve starch like that. So cattle cannot use starch. They don't eat grass normally in nature. We're making them eat grass and the seeds of grass because that's the way our agriculture has organized itself. But over 85% of the starch in corn goes through cows undigested. Why do we feed corn to cattle? Because of protein and fat. And we can store it a long time, and we can feed it in feedlots. If we're a corporation and don't have a lot of land, we can buy the corn off the farmers for almost nothing, and then feed the cattle in our feedlots. And it's really convenient, but it's very wasteful. Now, we can redesign this system. And in fact, it's already been done. We just have to do more of it. When you produce alcohol, what are we producing alcohol from again?
Switchgrass.
No. Basic materials. Carbohydrates, which is starch. So if we take the corn and we first make alcohol, we get 2 byproducts. One is carbon dioxide, which, by the way, a lot of the carbon dioxide in this country used in industry and in your sodas and stuff is made by burning natural gas. Because, natural gas is CH4. So when you burn it, basically you get CO2 and some water. So that's how they make carbon dioxide for industry. So we make a lot of carbon dioxide that could replace natural gas. We also get a byproduct called dried distillers' grains and solubles from corn. This is the mash leftover from making corn. Now, back in the old days when the revenuers were trying to find who was making moonshine, they'd just go to the county fair. Oh, fattest hogs, we're going to his farm tomorrow because this is really great animal feed. Why? It becomes a protected protein in the process of being fermented, and the starch is removed, which is in the way of absorbing the protein and fat in a cow's stomach. So if you take basically 100 pounds of corn, it has about 33 pounds of dried distillers' grains as a result, and the rest of it, became alcohol and CO2. If we feed the 33 pounds of dried distillers' grains to the cattle instead of the 100 pounds of corn, they gain 17% more weight, 30% faster. So you need to turn the food versus fuel thing on its head. It's immoral to not ferment our corn because it decreases the amount of food. So we could take the extra corn and feed everyone in the world with it, the 17% we now don't eat.
But they don't want our altered corn.
Well, they don't want our GM corn, and I don't blame them, But the point is, it's not a food versus fuel issue. It's a food and fuel issue, and we get both. We don't give up anything here. Now,
what about the water?
Water can be reused in an alcohol plant several times before it has to go off to something else. In other words, you can take the mash, which is sterile, and you can use it for the next batch 3 or 4 times before you have to run it out. In Archer Daniels Midland plant, 200 million gallon per year plant, they have no sewer. There is no waste. The only way water leaves the plant is from the cooling towers, where some of it evaporates to cool it so they can use it for other functions. No sewer. 200 million gallons per year. They have a small sewage treatment plant for the people who work there. They have to process their sewage. But nothing from the alcohol plant ends up in the environment. It is all made profit from. And that's them. We can do a much better job.
Dave?
Yes. Well, okay, the price of gasoline has nothing to do with the price of a barrel of oil. Nothing whatsoever. Because if you take a look at what comes out of a barrel of oil, and I'm telling you this is a 1980 figure, it's much more now. In 1980, a barrel of oil generated $25,000 worth of products, nylons, pesticides, various plastics, industrial chemicals. And that was about 15% or so of the oil went to that. The rest of the oil is thrown away. It becomes toxic waste. And we pay for the privilege of getting rid of their toxic waste because whatever's left over from making more valuable things from oil ends up in the gasoline. There are over 400 different things on a given day that get dumped into gasoline, and no 2 days are alike, depending on what they're making at the refinery. And we pay to get rid of the toxic waste. So the money the oil companies make, because they're oil companies, is from all those other products. Pesticides cost $80 a pound. The oil costs almost nothing per pound in comparison to that. So there's no reason to charge us full freight for fuel except for greed, because the money they're making on all the important, so-called important stuff, really pays the whole freight. And just like Rockefeller dumping that gasoline in the rivers at night, they've just arranged to neatly package it up there for us and tell us how it's so special, and they make it just for us, and it's just right, and it's better than everyone else's, and it's just toxic waste. And it's carcinogenic, it's mutagenic, it's tetragenic, which means it damages fetuses. It's horrible stuff. The stuff that's in gasoline is banned in industry. Benzene, you can't use that anywhere nowadays. Yet it's permitted to be up to 30% of gasoline. Garbage byproduct. Totally carcinogenic. Two-strokes. You burn that stuff in a two-stroke engine. The difference between a four-stroke and a two-stroke is that in a four-stroke, the basic cycle is the piston goes down, it sucks in air and fuel, it goes up and compresses it, the spark plug fires, it drives the piston down, that's the third stroke, right? One stroke, one stroke, two strokes, three strokes goes down, and then it pushes on the fourth stroke, pushes the exhaust out. With two strokes, it's down and up, which means that the intake and exhaust valves are open at the same time for a brief time, and unburned fuel goes out the exhaust. Benzene, toluene, and xylene are up to 40% of gasoline, and it goes out of the exhaust. Severe carcinogens. So two strokes can run on alcohol just fine. There's special two-stroke oils that mix with alcohol that you can that do the lubrication, because in two strokes you have to put the lubricant in the fuel. I have used biodiesel as a lubricant with alcohol at rates of 75 and 100 to 1. 1 part biodiesel, 75 or 100 parts alcohol. No wear. Runs just fine. Biodiesel is a very good lubricant. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I wrote this book back in the early 80s. I'd been going around the country. I had way too much adrenaline and way too much youth, and I just threw myself at this thing. And for 3 years, I taught 180 workshops around the United States. I appeared over 750 times in radio, television, and newspapers to promote those workshops. And PBS said, wow, this is really cool. People really like this subject. We want to make a series of how to make alcohol with you and sell a book about it at the end. This was a new idea at the time. Only one book had ever been sold on PBS before, and that was Yan Can Cook, about Chinese cooking. So this was the second book. And so we spent 2 years working on this book. I went 1,500 miles all over the Pacific Northwest and California to visit my students and others who were making alcohol as a result of my classes. And we got all their stories, we filmed all their operations, and we did a condensed version of my 8-hour workshop, which was all how-to, not all this stuff, it was strictly how-to, that I'd been teaching for a couple of years, and it came out to be a 10-part series, 10 half-hour shows. And I was right here in this town, because